Gary Drayton wasn't supposed to find anything new that day, yet one wrong turn in the swamp changed everything. His detector hit a signal too deep, too sharp, too engineered. Minutes later, he was staring into a hidden shaft no search team had ever documented, its walls lined with medieval tool marks no colonist could have made. Scattered at the entrance were relic shards, foreign shells, and a coin older than the island itself. Proof someone had buried something massive here and wanted it hidden for centuries. As Gary pushed deeper, gold traces glimmered through the stone, and a carved arrow pointed straight toward the old shoreline escape route tied to the legendary Templar fleet. Every clue pointed to one truth. This wasn't just another tunnel. This was the vault the money pit was designed to distract from, the chamber built to hide $160 million in treasure the world was never meant to see. Before we dive into tonight's discovery, hit that like button and subscribe, because what Gary Drayton uncovers in the next few minutes may rewrite the entire story of Oak Island. The night is cold enough to sting, but Gary barely notices. He's back on Oak Island after midnight, boots crunching over damp soil, moving with the urgency of a man following a whisper only he can hear. A strange glint he spotted the night before, something metallic, something out of place, has been stuck in his mind like a splinter. Gary's hunted treasure across half the planet, but Oak Island has always been different. The island plays games. It shows you something once, then hides it again. But Gary isn't one to let the island win. As he steps into a patch of moonlight, something answers him. A sharp metallic ping rings under his boot, clear, crisp, unmistakably intentional. He freezes. That sound wasn't rock. It wasn't debris. It was a signal, a buried object that shouldn't be here. Nothing in the surveys, nothing on the old maps, nothing anyone has ever recorded. Gary crouches, sweeping the ground with slow, practiced motions, and instantly feels it. The atmosphere shifts around him. The trees seem to lean in. The air thickens. The entire island feels like it's holding its breath. He clicks on the CTX detector, expecting a routine spike, but the machine explodes with readings so intense the screen almost whites out. He's only ever seen numbers like this near medieval caches, places where gold and sacred metals were deliberately hidden. That's when it hits him. Whatever lies beneath his boots wasn't an accident. It wasn't erosion. It wasn't an old miner's dump. It was engineered, hidden, buried with purpose, and whoever buried it wanted it to stay buried. Gary begins to scrape away the soil, careful, deliberate. Within minutes, the ground shifts under his hand, revealing a faint seam, a perfect straight line in the earth. He taps it again. Hollow, too hollow. He grabs a pry bar and works it under the edge, lifting a panel of soil-reinforced timber that shouldn't exist here. And underneath it, emptiness, a void extending down into absolute darkness, a vertical cavity, narrow, deep, and definitely man-made. He leans closer, shining his light into the abyss, and that's when he sees it. Timbers, perfectly preserved timbers, lined in tight formation, each piece locked into the next like an interlocking puzzle. No decay, no rot. Almost like they were treated with something long forgotten, a preservation technique from centuries before modern chemistry. Gary traces the wood grain with his fingertips and freezes. Carved symbols, not random scratches, not accidental marks. These are deliberate engravings, identical to medieval Templar symbols he once saw on Spanish relics smuggled across the Atlantic in the 1300s. Crosses, angles, a pattern that shouldn't exist on this continent, let alone inside a hidden shaft beneath Oak Island. He leans back, breath caught in his chest, watching the geometry unfold as he follows the carvings down the wall. This isn't a simple shaft. It mirrors the protected vault layout design, the exact methods engineered by Templar builders to hide high-value treasure hoards where no king, no raider, no invader could ever find them. This wasn't a dig site. This wasn't a tunnel for retrieval. It was a hiding place, and Gary's whisper escapes before he can stop it. This wasn't built to find treasure. It was built to hide it. But the deeper he peers, the more complications surface. A thin drift of cold air rises from the shaft, brushing his face. Not random airflow, directed airflow. A secondary tunnel has to be down there, feeding into the cavity from a direction that makes no logical sense. Gary shines his light again, spotting something glimmering in the dark. Strands of quartz running through the walls, chiseled with precision. Not modern tools, not colonial axes, but hand tools from a time when engineering was done by feel, by sound, by instinct. He lowers himself further, bracing against the timber supports, letting his light sweep across the details etched into the darkness. Embedded iron wedges sit between the joints, primitive, hammered by hand, shaped like the medieval tunneling wedges Gary once studied in a museum. Every angled support around him follows an old European mining code, a system designed to redirect collapses and shield whatever lay buried below. Techniques lost by the 1500s, yet perfectly preserved here. And as Gary studies the construction, it becomes undeniable. This entire shaft is part of a multi-layer, multi-trigger defense network built long before the money pit was ever mentioned. An engineered warning meant for anyone who dared to descend. He steadies his breath, fingertips grazing the ancient timber as he continues down. The shaft narrows, funneling him into a tighter throat of stone, and his beam catches something ahead. Something so exact it almost looks modern. A massive stone plug fills the passage like a cork driven into a wine bottle, fitted with impossible precision, not a millimeter of give. No erosion, no shifting, no sign of age despite the centuries. Gary presses his palm against the cold surface, and the truth sharpens. Grooves spiral across the stone. Not cracks, not stress marks, but deliberate depressions carved to mesh with a pressure lock system used in Templar crypt vaults across Europe. A mechanism built to seal something precious behind it, and to ensure only the right hands would ever reach what lay beyond. But what freezes Gary isn't the stone, it's what lies just beneath it. As he brushes away packed sediment, a thin shimmering layer reveals itself, silver-infused clay, spread across the undersurface like metallic paint. A medieval decoy material, he's seen it before in ancient sites meant to defeat early metal seekers. Not modern detectors, those didn't exist, but crude mining pans and rudimentary probes. This silver-clay mix would have scrambled the metallic echo and made any intruder believe the chamber was empty or worthless, a deliberate misdirection built into the earth. Gary runs his finger through a crack in the material and feels gritty particles cling to his glove. Gold. Microdust lodged deep in the seam where the stone meets the wall. Someone sealed this chamber after handling treasure, and small fragments, stray flecks, were trapped underneath the clay before the plug was set. The stone wasn't placed because of collapse or danger. It was installed to hide something of immense value, something the builders expected to remain concealed for all time. But the shaft isn't done revealing itself. As Gary evaluates the chamber, he spots a faint glimmer above him on the timber support. He shifts his light and catches something he missed on the way down, a sequence of carved crosses positioned in a perfect alignment down the vertical span. Not religious graffiti, not decoration, but coordinates. A star map, a Templar navigational pattern he once spent months studying in old archives in Majorca. Each cross marks a celestial point, and together they form a constellation pattern used by the Templars to encode directions. He traces the orientation with his hand, realizing the alignment isn't random. It points toward the long-rumored, rarely believed secondary vault said to exist beneath the money pit. A vault more guarded than the primary one, structured like a final sanctuary for the highest value treasure. One cross catches his eye because it's chipped, a small wedge of stone missing near the edge. Gary brings the light in close and sees something he wasn't prepared for. Beneath the chipped surface is gold leaf, not paint, not plating, but true hammered gold, applied as a symbolic signature of elite Templar guardians. They mark their most sacred vaults with gold so thin it could only be seen when the stone cracked, revealing identity only to those deep enough and lucky enough to find it. The carvings shift direction farther down the wall, forming a staggered pattern that almost looks accidental until Gary steps back and views them all at once. It's a cipher, numbers disguised as line angles. He decodes them instinctively. 1347, the year 1347, a year tied to fleeing Templar survivors escaping persecution, carrying their most valuable relics, gold, and documents across oceans to any land that would hide them. That is the moment Gary stops thinking about this shaft as a structural anomaly or forgotten pit. It is a clandestine Templar vault entrance, built with purpose, hidden with intent, guarded with systems no colonial miners could replicate. He lowers himself deeper, eyes scanning the soil, the timber seams, the debris collected over centuries. That's when the next wave of evidence hits him like a punch. Gold dust embedded directly in ancient mud layers, not flakes from a prospector's shovel. This is original fallout, the kind that drifts from handling large amounts of raw gold. As he sweeps it aside, more fragments surface, small hammered shards, irregular in shape, matching the design of medieval ingots cut into sections for transport. These aren't coins, not jewelry, not decorative pieces. They are the remnants of gold bars intended for storage or smuggling. Then something metallic catches his foot. He kneels, digs, and pulls out a rusted hinge fragment, corroded but still recognizable. A hinge from a chest or crate, but not a crude pioneer box. The cross-brace design is Iberian, Spanish, a hinge type used to reinforce crates carrying high-value artifacts during naval transport. The wood it once held together has long since decayed, but the hinge remains, trapped in the soil like a time capsule. Only a meter farther down, Gary's hand brushes something with a different sheen. Soft, cold, unmistakably silver. A broken shard of plate, engraved with faint scrollwork patterns tied to Spanish aristocracy of the 1300s. Proof of multinational treasure, proof of European transport, proof that Templar gold traveled alongside royal silver, packed together in the same cargo. He stares at the collection of clues, gold dust, ingot shards, Iberian hinges, Spanish plate, and the bigger picture crystallizes. This vault wasn't just one culture's treasure. It was a multinational hoard, drawn from Templar reserves, Spanish collections, and likely other European caches, all hidden together in a place so remote the builders expected it would never be found. Every detail screams wealth beyond imagination. The modern valuation? Easily $160 million. Gary's heart races, but he doesn't move yet. The evidence itself seems to hum, as if warning him that the shaft isn't done revealing its secrets. A subtle shift beneath his boots draws his attention. The air trembles slightly, dust falling in a rhythmic pulse. Not random, timing, a pattern, a trigger. Gary leans closer, studying the timber beams and the stone below. Fractures ripple diagonally across the supports, faint but unmistakable. He recognizes the signature, a delayed structural trap engineered to collapse sections above intruders, designed to punish the exit rather than the entry. Every instinct honed from studying medieval vaults screams caution. Something in the shaft responded to his presence, a centuries-old mechanism beginning its slow countdown, and Gary tightens his grip on the rope, knowing the treasure's protection is as lethal as its value. A thin hiss rises from the walls. Water, not dripping, redirecting, shifting deliberately through unseen channels. Gary knows exactly what that means. Hidden flood tunnels, likely connected to underground reservoirs that have been dormant for centuries, are resetting. The same type of diversion grid that destroyed early Oak Island excavations, drowning pits and washing away evidence. The Templars engineered these systems with a precision rivaling modern hydrology, using gravity, pressure valves, and clay seals to reroute water at specific intervals. And here, deep beneath the island, the system is still active. A wrong move could send a cascade roaring through the shaft, collapsing the floor, erasing the gallery, burying every artifact forever. This isn't an abandoned dig site. It's a living, breathing medieval security system, waiting for one mistake. Gary closes his eyes for 1 second, steadying his breath. The island wants silence, slow movements, respect. He shifts his weight and examines the stone plug behind him. A hairline fissure has formed on the left edge, proof that the plug is part of a trigger assembly. If it were to fall or rotate, even slightly, it would engage the collapse mechanism above. He steps sideways, tight against the timbered wall, and his boot finds a slight indentation in the floor. A pressure plate. He lifts his foot immediately. This entire level is a death puzzle, a final barrier protecting the inner vault from anyone reckless enough to force their way in. The tremor settles, like the island acknowledging Gary's caution. The water stops shifting. The dust stills. Whatever he did or didn't do kept the trap from fully activating. But it also tells him something even more important. Whoever built this system expected intruders. They planned for centuries of seekers, thieves, invaders, kings, and fortune hunters, and they built a defense that could outlive all of them. Gary presses forward, easing around the stone plug, following a narrow seam in the rock that he noticed earlier. What looked like a natural fracture is actually a concealed access path. A crawl space barely wide enough for him to squeeze through opens into a broader pocket of carved stone. His light sweeps across the chamber and reveals what he instantly understands is not an accident, not random carving, but an underground gallery, a symbolic warning placed before the final chamber. The wall stretches out in front of him, covered in murals carved and painted centuries ago. Knights robed and armored carry reliquaries across the surface, ornate containers holding sacred relics, gold chests heavy enough that the carved figures lean under their weight, scroll vaults shaped like cylindrical tubes wrapped in protective bindings. These aren't depictions of ceremony, they're records of transport, a story of movement, of fleeing guardians carrying their most valuable treasures into exile. A serpent coils around the treasure procession, its body painted in dark mineral pigment, wrapping protectively around the gold. Not a symbol of danger, but of vigilance. In medieval Templar iconography, the serpent represents the guardian that sleeps but never dies. A warning to trespassers that what lies ahead is watched, not by men, but by a legacy designed to punish the unworthy. Gary steps closer, brushing away centuries of dust with the back of his glove, revealing a central shield emblem embedded into the mural. The paint flakes away to expose real gold leaf pressed into the carving. This wasn't added for beauty, it was an announcement, a declaration of value, a message that what lies beyond this gallery is not common wealth. It is sacred treasure, protected by faith, fear, and engineering. As he moves deeper, the gallery narrows into a final passage, and the air grows colder, heavier, ancient. The stone changes texture, smoother, more deliberate. And then Gary sees it, a rectangular shape at the end of the passage, towering from floor to ceiling, sealed in total finality. A stone door, perfectly cut, edges so tight a blade couldn't slide through. The front seam is filled with hardened molten lead, poured centuries ago while still hot, ensuring no living hand could reopen it without knowing the technique. This is unmistakably Templar craftsmanship. They used molten lead seals only when a chamber held something of such value that tampering had to be detectable forever. 3 copper bolts are embedded across the face of the door, one at the top, one at the center, one at the base. Each bolt engraved with a different cross variant, not decorative, not random. Each symbol likely part of a 3-step unlocking method. The top cross, a broad, equal-arm Templar cross. The center, a flared Crusader variant. The bottom, a narrow cross of Lorraine. Together they spell out a progression. Authority, guardianship, sanctity. Gary reaches out, running his fingers over the engravings, feeling the slight warmth from the friction of centuries-old mineral settling. He unclips a portable magnet from his vest and slowly sweeps it across the stone surface. It drags, stubborn and heavy, not smooth, a resistance that speaks of massive metallic slabs hidden behind the sealed door. He sweeps again, feeling the same dull, unyielding drag. Gold has its own subtle signature, and through the vibrations in the stone, Gary senses bars, plates, artifacts, dense treasures stacked beyond the wall. Pressing his ear to the stone, a faint metallic echo confirms it. The chamber is filled with objects whose weight and density only centuries of careful concealment could hide. This isn't just a vault, it's a no-return seal, a sacred safeguard designed by hands sworn to keep it hidden. He rests his palm against the ancient stone, the enormity of what lies beyond settling into his bones. As his eyes sweep the immediate area, he notices smaller details, treasure crumbs left behind in the centuries-long secrecy of the shaft. His boot nudges something metallic, a soft clink that demands investigation. Kneeling, he brushes aside packed sediment and reveals a medieval coin, darkened and stamped with a half-worn crest. A coin like this couldn't have fallen from a miner's pocket. It came from a builder's hand, lost in a moment of labor long ago. Nearby, jagged ceramic shards catch his flashlight beam. One painted with an Iberian anchor, another etched with a lamb, Agnus Dei. These fragments aren't local pottery or colonial scraps. They are transatlantic artifacts, relics of holy cargo transported with intention. As Gary lifts each piece, the story crystallizes. This vault isn't just about gold. It's a repository of sacred history, a layered hoard where every shard and ingot tells a story of centuries of deliberate, painstaking concealment. He pushes deeper into the shaft, tracing rough stonework with gloved fingers. The cut marks are distinctive, parallel, angled, rhythmic, exactly like the ones documented in Templar safe houses in Portugal. These aren't colonial tools. These are medieval chisels swung by trained builders who knew how to fortify a chamber that must never be found. Behind a support beam, Gary spots something even stranger, a drainage channel carved with a hybrid Roman Templar technique, using stone gradients impossible to recreate without ancient engineering knowledge. It was designed to divert flooding away from the vault, meaning the builders expected pursuit and sabotage. They were ready for siege long before any searchers ever set foot on the island. Then Gary's light freezes on a carved arrow, sharp, deliberate, pointing east, toward the shoreline locals have whispered about for decades. A rumored dock, half myth, half rumor, said to be used by 14th century escape fleets fleeing persecution. If the arrow aligns with that coast, then the dock wasn't a rumor, it was a waypoint. The point where a Mediterranean crew landed, hauled forbidden cargo through the woods, and began building the most elaborate hiding system North America had ever seen. And as if to erase any remaining doubt, the sediment lining the base of the shaft contains shell residue, Mediterranean species, the kind sailors carried in bilge water. Evidence that a crew from across the ocean reached Nova Scotia long before Columbus ever dreamed of a voyage. Gary steps back, breath slow, steady, but his mind racing. Everything matches. The stonework, the hydrology, the relics, the symbols, the arrow, the foreign residue. It all converges into one conclusion that Oak Island researchers have chased for generations. The Templar fleet didn't just disappear, it arrived here. And this shaft, hidden under centuries of misdirection, is the final link proving it. He calls the team down, voice tight, controlled, even though adrenaline threatens to break through every word. They gather in the cramped chamber, their lights pooling over the relics and gold veins like something out of a legend, finally stepping into reality. Gary lays it out plainly, meticulously, like a man who understands the gravity of what he's about to say. The money pit, he explains, was never meant to be found. It was a decoy, a distraction engineered to consume treasure hunters for centuries. The real vault, the one holding the wealth, the relics, the forbidden history, was always this shaft. He shows them the evidence one piece at a time. Medieval engineering incompatible with the colonial era, relic shards tied to holy cargo, drainage systems designed to protect something invaluable, and that unmistakable Mediterranean arrow carved into solid stone. Then he gives them the final number, based on the density of the gold veins, the size of the chamber, and historical estimates from the lost convoys. The hoard sealed behind the final barrier isn't worth a few million. It's worth roughly $160 million in gold alone, and infinitely more in historical value. But with that revelation comes a warning. The chamber ahead still holds mechanisms, triggers, releases, pressure systems that haven't been disturbed in hundreds of years. Opening them blindly could flood the shaft, collapse the chamber, or bury them alive. Gary doesn't sugarcoat it. The Templars didn't hide their treasure. They defended it, with traps that were designed to succeed even if the men who built them never return. The team stands silent, every breath echoing off the ancient walls. Gary lifts his flashlight, letting its beam rest on the sealed passageway ahead. Rough stone, faint symbols, and the unmistakable geometry of a vault built with purpose. Then finally he breaks the silence with the line that will rewrite Oak Island history forever. "Boy, we finally found the treasure they tried to hide forever."